Hi, welcome to Tips Tuesday. My name is Melanie Thorley and I'm the Principal Solicitor at MJT Law. Now today we're going to look at general protections disputes, and to do that we're going to go to the Fair Work Commission. So I've started with the Google page. I'm just going to say Fair Work Commission here, press enter, and it's normally the first thing that comes up, certainly on my screen. So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to get to the General Protections website. Brilliant. Now the problem is, how do you navigate this website? It's actually harder than you think. So we're just going to make it easy on ourselves and type in General Protections. And press enter. And we're going to click on the first thing that comes up, and this is the General Protections web page itself. So this has a lot of information on it, and because you're being dismissed for a reason that you believe to be a general protection, there is quite a lot of things that you have to think about. So my recommendation is you go to the General Protections benchmark book, and then you click it again, and then you get the PDF version, and I've downloaded that already. And here it is. Okay, so part of you can see I'm at page 11. If I just scroll up here, you can see that it's the benchmark book itself. Oops, gone too far. Okay, I'm going to go back to 11 because this is where it gives me a flowchart as to what happens in a dismissal dispute with regards to a general protection. So you can see here that there's a step-through process. You file the application, it's listed for some sort of conference with both parties, get the chance to file their submissions. Then there's a telephone conference or conciliation with a conciliator, and either the matter is settled or it's not settled. So that can be a bit of a process, as you can see. It's not a particularly good. Let's see if I can make that bigger. And of course you can download this yourself. So if the matter's not settled, it could go to the Deputy President to have another go at it. If it continues to be not settled, then you get a certificate of failed conciliation, and then you have to decide within 14 days whether the parties consent to go through the commission, or you have to make an application with the Federal Circuit Court for the matter to be determined. Now that's for a dismissal dispute. There is a non-dismissal dispute process, and it's much faster, as you can see, or it's a lot easier. You're not being dismissed, so it's not about you not working. This is about trying to get both parties to a situation where you can both carry on working and being productive. So again, you file the application, as you can see up here, and it's listed for a conference. Now the trouble here is the parties can decide whether it's going to go to conference or not. If the matter doesn't go to conference, then it becomes a bit more tricky. If the matter does go to conference, then of course you've got the step-through process here. Either the matter is settled or not settled. One of the big things that you need to think about is how you're protected and what you're protected by. So I'm just going to scroll down for a second. Okay, you can see I've scrolled down to page 28, and this is where the role of the General Protections comes about. So General Protections has been introduced to protect workplace rights, to protect freedom of association, to provide protection from workplace discrimination, and to give effective relief for those who have been discriminated against or victimised, etc. So it works because of the provision 340 in the Act, and that states that a person must not take adverse action against another person because there's a workplace right, or they've not exercised the workplace right, and this is the protection one. So what you've got to think about is that the link, as you can see here, they're asking for the link between the adverse action and the protection. Because of the word because, it means that you need to establish that the action was taken because of this protected reason. So At this point, I'm going to assume that the action is a protected action, and the workplace right was a protected workplace right, and you have had adverse action taken against you because you exercise that workplace right. Okay, so the next thing we do is we need to download the forms. So I'm just going to come back over here and go back to this original page that we went to after we typed in general protections at the top here, and we're going to scroll all the way down, and then here you're going to see there's a Form 8 application and a Form C general protections application not involving dismissal. So the Form 8 is a dismissal one. The Form 8C is the non-dismissal one. So if I'm just going to pause it and bring both those forms up. Okay, so I have both forms here together side by side, and this is so I can show you how to fill in the forms. The forms are very, very similar, so we're going to stick with the forms, and I'm just going to talk you through how to fill this in. First of all, it obviously tells you who can use this form, and this is the not involving dismissal form, and this is the involving dismissal form. So this form is going to talk about when you were dismissed, have you made the application on time, and this one doesn't have that because of course you're still actually there. Okay, so we're going to keep going down, and there's information about how to lodge it, and of course you've got that 21 days to lodge it after the dismissal took place, but in this one you just need to lodge it. Okay, now we talked a little bit about the process, and it's slightly different for the dismissal one over the non-dismissal one, and you can go back to that general protection guide and have a look at that information, and obviously more the other information that's provided in that document. And this is here to say that the Commission is not going to provide you any legal advice whatsoever, and that can be quite frustrating, but of course you could just call me and ask a question or two. And there's a bit of information about what the terms mean, and we're into the form. Okay, so the form is extremely similar at this point, although this is an application under 372 and this is an application under 365. That's because 372 is the not involving dismissal and the 365 is the involving dismissal. Just make sure when you're filling in the application you fill in the right form. Were you dismissed, or are you looking at getting some help with an issue that you've got? Now you're going to be the applicant, so this is where you'd fill your information in. You're probably not an industrial organisation, so we're going to leave that. And people normally say that they want email, but if you don't have access to email, then the post is just fine. If you need an interpreter, you need to put that in there, and there's going to be a discussion about that a bit later. And then it's about any special assistance. It's also asking if you've got a representative. Now that's someone who's normally a union representative. Yeah, a friend or family member who will be speaking on your behalf, or a lawyer. Now you can just click yes, and then of course you provide their information here. If it's a lawyer, the likelihood is they're going to be filling in this form on your behalf, so that all that information will be done for you. There's a little bit more of information about the applicant in the non-dismissal form. It asks if you're an employee, a prospective employee, etc., etc. I'm going to assume on both forms that you're an employee working and you have had a problem at your workplace with discrimination, for instance, or you've exercised the workplace right and now they're treating you differently. So the next part is the respondent. Now that's the party with which you want to make the application against. That's normally your boss or the boss's business, shall I say. So you put the legal name of the business. Some of this information is likely found on your payslip, so get that out and take a look at it. Others you just fill in the best you can, and then the respondent themselves will probably fill in the rest when they get a chance to respond. So you put the information in, and then on this form it goes straight to the general protections dismissal. On this form it talks a little bit about background. So we're going to stay with the application involving dismissal at the moment, and that's because this part here, the background, comes later. So it's going to ask you on what date you were dismissed. So you just put the date down that you think that you were dismissed. Normally that's the date that you've been terminated and told to go home. Other times it might be something different. And then it asks on what date your employment commenced. And it's the same one here. What date did your employment commence? Also, in this form here, it asks you what the reasons were for the respondent for dismissing you. Normally they've got some sort of letter of dismissal or a separation certificate, and you put the information that's written on that form in there. This is not about your views, this is about why the respondent or why the business that you're working with terminated you. And the next part is whether you've made this part here is about whether you've made the application on time. If it's not on time, it's going to be very difficult for you to get this application going, because it's very unlikely you'll get an extension of time. Okay, so now we're back at the part of the form where it's all very similar. Have you ever made an application about this dispute somewhere else? Now remember that you can't have two applications going at the same time, and that if I just bring up the form here, this revised General Protections benchmark book will give you some information about that. So we're just going to click this down. Okay, so remedy. Now this is quite important to you, because you need to figure out what is it that you want. Now if you haven't been dismissed, you need to think about what is it that you want to achieve. Normally it's to get back to work, working as a functional person of that business without the stress of having this thing looming over you. Like if you're being discriminated against because you're pregnant and they've put you on duties that are inappropriate, and not because you're pregnant, but because not because you are pregnant and say can't lift heavy boxes, but because actually they just don't want to look at you anymore, then you'll be looking for a remedy that suits that situation. If you are being treated differently because you are sick and they want to reduce your pay or reduce your hours because you are unwell, then you might want to say something about that. Now, the remedies for a dismissal dispute can be a number of things, but most people either want their jobs back or they want some sort of compensation. And you would outline there what that might look like. And of course, that book, that guide that we had here, the Benchmark General Protections book, is going to be able to give you some help on that. There is a section here. Okay, so I've got to page 24, and it talks about the remedies and possible outcomes of a matter before the Commission, and that can include an order for reinstatement or compensation. So this booklet was going to be able to help you there. Okay, back to the form. Now we're talking about what's actually going on. What is it that you have a dispute about? What is the problem? And we talk about a contravention based on the act itself. So you need to describe what's been going on. Why has the respondent, why do you think the respondents behaved in this way, and what were the actions that led you to make this application? And look, that can be as long or short as necessary. If you're going to write this out on the document, then of course you need to add additional pages. If you're going to write it in this form, for instance, if I just write rubbish, you see that the form is lengthening as I'm going. Okay, the next section is about which sections of the Fair Work Act you allege the respondent contravened, okay, when they took or threatened action against you. Now, this is the benchmark book is going to really help you here. So my suggestion is you go back to it and try and look at the facts of what's going on and try to match them up with a protection or a workplace right. So it could be a workplace right as in there is something protected, or you may be coerced into doing something. There could be an industrial activity going on, or you might feel like you've been discriminated against. Now, if you do feel like you've been discriminated against, you need to go back to section 351, subsection 1, and actually state what that discrimination could be. And I'm just going to bring that section up quickly so you can have a look at it. Okay, so I've got this section of the Fair Work Act up, section 351, and it's asking you to set out what attribute in section 351 subsection 1. Okay, so if we go into this, we can see that this is section 351. This is subsection 1 here. So you need to look at this list and decide what is it that you've been discriminated against. Is it your race, colour, sex, sexual orientation, physical or mental disability, or are you pregnant? Is there a religious reason, political opinion? You need to actually identify what is it that has been the adverse, what is it that you've been discriminated against. Okay, so keep going down the form. You can see that there are a number, and because there is a if you're doing the non-dismissal one, then you've got a few more choices here. So just make sure that you are ticking the right box. I normally just put if I just show you now, I normally just put a big X in the one that I want, and that normally is enough for me. But you can highlight that any way you like. Okay, so moving down, now you have to explain how the action in this part here, you have to explain how that action has contravened the sections that you identified in here. So if we may step through the process, first of all you've got to state what the actions are that led you to make the application. What's going on? An example of this is you are a person who has several children at home and you have been looking after them, and you find that you are now pregnant, and there's some sort of discrimination because of that. Perhaps they don't want to give you the hours with which they want to give you, or you feel that you could show that you have been withheld pay parity because of your pregnancy or something like that. Then that would be the actions, and then you would complain, or you would write here what that right was. Was it discrimination? Then you would put the tick here, and then you would state pregnancy. Oops, I've spelt that wrong. Okay, that's what you would do. So at this point here, that's what you would have to do. You would have to step through. How did the actions here create this problem here? And you've got to sort of step people through that process. And that can take some time, or there can be quite a lot of information there. Or you just do the best you can and you kind of muddle through it, and that's the way it is. Okay, so now we're up to the last part of the form. So brilliant, you've managed to get through it, and hopefully you understand most of it. Certainly with the this book, you're going to have a lot more luck in filling in this form. Okay, the next part is disclosure, and you don't have to consent. You don't have to consent to the research, so you can leave that blank if you like, but you do have to sign the form. So it does state that you can just type your name if you don't have an electronic signature. So you can just put your name there, and then put your name again, and put the date. Of course, you're going to have to put the full date in, and then your capacity. So you are the applicant, so that's what you would write there. Now we have to scroll down to the application fee. So if I just pause this and go back to the website, it states that the current fee is $69.80. So you would go back to your form and you would go through the payment options. You can have a waiver, so there is a possibility that you can get that fee reduced, but you'd have to have a conversation with the Fair Work commission, or you can attach a cheque. You can pay by cash, but you would have to go in and do that in person, or you can pay by credit card. So there are some options there. And of course, if you're the payer, then that person needs to complete this information here as well. And then you send the form in. The website does tell you how to do that. If you've got some problems filing that form or sending it through to the commission, then you just contact them and ask them the question, how do you file this application? Okay, and that's it. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, please give me a call. You can find me at my website. This is my website here, and if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can get my contact details, or you can just click on the contact tab and go straight to my contact page, and there you can you can call me, or you can do the online email, and that's that. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it helpful, and keep watching. Thanks.